Hi, Shane here. Welcome to AusComX Show. We're missing Jerome this week. He's not feeling well. So, Jerome, if you're listening, I hope you're feeling a bit better. So tonight we have Lauren Marshall and Chris Gooch and talking about their comics and just what got them into comics. So let's get on with the show. Welcome to the AusComX Show again. Okay, our first guest tonight is Chris Gooch, and I'll just bring him straight on and we can start talking about comics. Hey, man, how you going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm disorganized already.
No stress.
Oh, why is it not letting me move this? Okay, sorry about that. The one mistake I always make with this is I don't keep track of the comments, and then I end up putting comments on the screen that are about 5 minutes late. And it just looks weird. Cool. So, Chris, probably my first question would be, what got you started in the comic industry here in Australia?
Well, I mean, it's probably a pretty typical story, like I always loved drawing, I always loved comics as a kid, and then as a teenager. And then when I finished high school, I started taking it more seriously. I went and studied fine art and didn't so much like contemporary art and put most of my effort into making, short comic stories and sort of trying to build up and get towards making eventually a graphic novel.
Oh, cool.
And, my first sort of steps into interacting with the local community were going to Squishface and doing like a 24-hour. Squishface was an open comic studio in Brunswick for 6 years. So in Melbourne, shut down. We'll probably reopen a bit later on, but that was maybe the first comics community experience I had. So going there, meeting a bunch of people. I was like 18 and just spending the whole night doing a comic book. And then going to things like the Sticky Zine Fair, which is the biggest zine fair in Melbourne, which has a lot of comics there. And meeting people and making things for that, and just, maybe it wasn't so much like selling your stuff, although that's always lovely, but just like interacting with people and meeting other people that make comics. And yeah, I think that was how I first started getting into it.
Oh, yeah, cool. Sounds like a great way to get into it. What actually getting a comic to print, what did you find was the hardest thing to get that happening?
I guess it depends which type of comics we're talking about. So like those early stages, like making zines and self-publishing and stuff, like honestly the hardest thing was probably working up the nerve to go do like the conventions or the zine fairs and sitting there and putting yourself out there in that respect and just finishing something and putting it out there. In terms of my other stuff, like the graphic novels. So I have 3 books out with an American publisher called Top Shelf at the moment. And
I have those actually.
I mean, thank you for buying them. I mean, I was lucky that someone could introduce me to them. I'd had a lot of like rejection just because it's very difficult, I think, for an Australian who doesn't have a huge social media following to make contact with these American publishers, because the impression I get is that they, pre-COVID, they would have gone to all the conventions and they would remember a face to go with a name and stuff along those lines. And that's how they would sort of meet people who didn't have like a profile or weren't a known quantity to them.
Yeah.
So that was the process of getting published with them. And then, I did my first book. And then after that, I organized to do a short story collection and my second book at the same time. And now I'm working on a third with them as well.
Oh, awesome. That's great, man.
Thanks.
And we've got Rusty's giving us a g'day. G'day, Rusty. So, I guess when you started and everything, so you were saying that you drew a lot, you liked comics a lot, but was there anything that inspired you to take that step to actually start creating your own, or was it just sort of organic?
I think it's more in the sense that I'd always wanted to make them, or at least it was early enough that I don't have a proper memory of like reading something and being like, this is something I want to dedicate a big portion of my life to or whatever. But, as a teenager, as a young adult, there are definitely books that I've read that are just like, holy shit, this is like phenomenal. And like The Dark Knight Returns, for example, that was like, 14-year-old me. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And, everybody who probably read that book when they were like a 14, 12-year-old probably has that relationship where they love it. And then they're like, oh, I don't know. And they keep coming back to it. But that was one of those. And then a lot of manga as well. Like the first long form, like maybe comic that I ever read that I got really absorbed into was Miyazaki's Nausicaa, like his big epic, that you can buy in those big fat 2-volume editions now. And like, I mean, as much as I like, Frank Miller's illustrations and I enjoyed Dark Knight Returns, like, nothing compares to the scope of Nausicaa. It's so fantastic. So I definitely had a lot of experiences like that where you're just like, oh my God, like, you're young. And even now, just looking at it, it's like, how can you even, like, how do people make this? Like, this is so amazing. And you feel so connected to it. And it's very important to you, especially with that early stage with identity forming and whatnot. But that's about as close as I get to having like a moment where I was like, oh, I want to do this.
Oh yeah, cool. And we've got Spedsy saying g'day, if I can get my mouse in the right place. Okay, Spedsy. So the first, I think, when I ordered your books, I got them from, I think it was Booktopia from memory. The first one that arrived was Bottled. So tell us about Bottled.
So that was... No, sorry, go.
Oh, I was just going to say, just as like a summary or just anything you want to tell us about the comic, actually. Yeah.
For sure. So that one came out in 2016. When I was talking before about working towards a graphic novel, that was, when I was in uni, I was sort of was trying to build up to make something. And then in third year, so about 3 years out of high school, I spent just in the background about a year writing the first draft of the script. And then once I finished it, I went and got a studio space at Squishface and just started drawing it. So it's about maybe 250 pages. It's one of those weird things where it'll take you like 40 minutes to read at most, maybe. So it's like years and years and years. That's all comics, but years of life and years of drawing, and then it's all just done in 40 minutes. But in terms of like what the story is, it's sort of like young adults lost in that sort of like stage that I was in when I was writing it, which we've all been, I'm sure, where the relationships you had coming out of high school or just that teenage period are starting to deteriorate, and you're starting to change, and the people around you are starting to change, and you start to, have that gap grow with these people that were like, like a family of sorts. You saw them like every day at high school and or every day after school or whatever. So it's about those relationships breaking down or at the very end of a relationship like that breaking down and sort of imploding, and people being shitheads to each other.
Yep, makes sense. I've got to sit down and actually spend that 40 minutes. So I look forward to that. Sounds like a cool little book. That's something you can really relate to as well, by the sounds of it. So, because I remember all that happening. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's definitely, it's not autobiographical by any means, but I mean, it's meant to be somewhat personal.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of people have gone through that same situation or journey, whatever you want to call it. So that'll be could explain the book's popularity. That everyone's gone on a similar journey. With that book, I just was curious: is there any reason you picked like the two color tone way of doing it? Is that for effect, or is that some sort of to set the mood, or?
Well, I mean, I guess the answer is yes to both. That's something I
Okay,
do
yep.
for all the books I have out top shelf. It's it's line work, like black and white line work with half tones, so sort of like the dots. You can see them on the screen here, up the top. Examples of those.
Yep.
With the spot color. Generally, I try and pick a spot color that I think matches the general mood of the comic or the story or whatever. But it's also like a practical choice. Like I really love the restricted color, and I want the pages and images to kind of pop as much as they can. But I also only have X amount of hours to dedicate to
Yep.
And like particularly, I'm slowing down a little bit more, taking a bit more time now. But particularly when I was doing that one and some of the short stories that are in the collection, it's like I had the attitude of like I want to get this done. It was more about getting it finished, getting it out there, than having every page be as perfect as it could be. So yeah, there's a practical and a tonal style element, I'd say.
Okay, cool. Yeah, actually, yeah. Sorry, I'm just going over what I've prepared for myself so I didn't get too lost. So what's it like? Because I've been with ComX Studio, I've been dealing with a lot of short stories with people at the moment. And I've seen the process behind making like an 8-page story or a 24-page story or a little trade paperback. But what's it like making something that's like 250, did you say? 250 pages?
Yeah. I have these two different ways that I approach making the long form stuff. And I try and sort of alternate between them just so that it doesn't get mostly too boring for myself, so it feels like I'm changing up a bit. So for Bottled, that was 250 pages. I wrote essentially what looked like a screenplay that had all the dialogue and stage directions and stuff like that. And it was about 4 or 5 chapters. And then chapter by chapter, I print off chapter 1, note it down with like what I wanted to divide up the dialogue and directions into panels and pages, thumbnail that, and then just illustrate the entire chapter. So going from that written screenplay type of thing to the page. My recent book is called, my most recent one that's been published is called Under Earth, which is much longer. That's like 600 something, 550. It's a lot of pages. For that one, I had this aim of trying to make it more driven by illustrations, more organic, especially because there's a lot of like extended action sequences, you're running and punching and stampedes and jumping out of buildings and things like that. So I wanted to have that drive the page and panel transitions. So for that, I would write sort of dialogue just in a notebook or on a blank A4 page, real rough, and then just go straight into the illustrations on my tablet, just using it digitally.
Okay.
So not having that finalized script that I've gone over and revised and tried to make as perfect as I can, just jumping in rough and doing like a rough first draft in like total readable, very simple thumbnails, but readable. And I like the process of that was like I ended up having like these big long drafts that I had to sort of trim down, and then I go through and I rewrite some of the dialogue and sort of tinker with it to try and, because how it is with writing it, you not really often, I find, until you get to the end of that first draft, you're not 100% sure what the characters are or where it's heading. So going back through the second draft, there's that great Neil Gaiman quote where he's like, oh, second draft is making it look like you knew what you were doing the whole time. It's making like consistency in character and making sure it's all driving towards the ending that you now know what it actually is. So yeah, that's how I approach making these long form ones. And it's been a very long time since I did a short form thing, but it's probably a similar process.
Yeah, well, I've only seen those 3 of your books actually. So, my brain's abandoning me, forgetting what they're
That's true.
called. I know bottled, and you said under
Earth, and the short
Under
story
Earth?
collection is Deep Breaths.
Deep Breaths. That's a short story?
Short story collection. So
collection. I was going to say, I remember the book being just as big as the others.
yeah, collection. Maybe
collection.
the
Cool.
short stories orange, Under Earth is purple, and bottled is red. Those are the colors.
Red. Okay. Cool. So with a story that long, have you got any like techniques you could share? Because we have a lot of people who actually write comics and draw comics and so forth who watch the show. We have a more majority of that than we do fans. Is there any techniques that you have that keeps the reader interested for such a long comic?
Well, I like reading a lot of like how-to books and stuff. So like that's just something I do sort of to go to sleep. Is like I'll listen to, I don't know, like a master class or or whatever. I'm listening to one right now called like How to Write Best-Selling Fiction, which is fun.
Cool.
But to be honest, most of that stuff is all stuff you can take and leave. Like I think the best thing if you're making stuff is always just to finish your first draft to make sure you get to the end. Don't start illustrating it until you've at the very least have a totally firm idea of where you're going, and it, ideally written drafts, otherwise it all spirals out of control and goes to shit. But I don't know. Maybe I don't think too much about trying to grip a reader or engage a reader. Maybe that's bad.
No. I mean, you got a great story, so that's probably more than enough. I was just curious if you had any sort of tricks of the trade type of thing. We had another guy on who talked about page turns, for example. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The comics I make are pretty decompressed, so it's not so much paying super close attention to, how everything stacks up and then leading towards that one page turn. It's more like manga, like getting sucked into a sequence that might lead to a specific visual or set piece. I always really like this thing that Chester Brown said. Whatever you think of him, he's certainly not perfect, but he was always like, several pages of talking heads will always be better than like a page crammed full of dialogue. And I think for me, as a reader and someone that makes comics, that applies not just to dialogue, but to everything else. Like, I don't want to, like, if I'm going to read an action sequence, I don't want to, like, look at a full-page spread of Superman punching Batman and that's all you get. Like, I want to, have that sort of more manga experience where there's, like, ducking and weaving and speed lines and letting a sequence breathe, and, like, that's how I want to be sucked in. So I guess I try and emulate that when I'm making stuff.
So a real manga influence.
A bit, just in terms of like, things being decompressed and letting them play out and stuff like that. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that. What would you say about proper world building? I think you've already answered this one. Proper world building when to make a narrative smoother. This is what you were saying before, isn't it? Where you get that whole draft out, so you know exactly how it's ending, and so all the pieces make sense. So, yeah,
for sure. I think it depends in terms of world building. Like, I guess it depends on the genre you're working in. Like, for example, the Under Earth is a prison story. It's set in a subterranean, hollowed out landfill where, prisoners get dumped and they sort of have to fend for themselves. And there's, they have their whole society down there. The way I approach that is like One Piece was like a big sort of touch point or whatever for that, in the sense that a lot of the technology there is totally anachronistic. Like, the level of technology that they have phones, but they don't have equivalent levels of other stuff, if I'm making sense. He sort of just builds it out of whatever he wants to put in the story. And that's how I built the world. I went, just like, was trying to get through this long draft and just adding things in that I thought were cool and I wanted to happen, like in terms of world building. And then I went through and I evened it out. But my new comic is more like a horror, monster horror thing. And a lot of the feedback I've been getting from the publisher is you can't, or we don't want you to do the same thing you did last time, where like it's not a big mishmash. It's like, because of the different genre and the different way you're presenting it, things need to be more well defined. The world needs to have set boundaries, and there needs to be more of an explanation of why these things are happening and how we got to this point.
Oh, okay.
But I would just personally think that the best thing to do is to start with the story. If you're writing a fantasy thing, it's always best to start with characters and story as opposed to a big long, 1,000 years ago there was peace, and 2,000 years after that there was war, and that stuff is very difficult to have it drive an engaging story.
Yep. Makes sense. So that the Under Earth one, is that like a dystopian type story? Sorry, I haven't had the chance.
No stress. Yes, it's sort of like specifically that. So the garbage city, it's very much like set in the detritus of our world. So there's a sequence where characters are sort of like mining out all this sort of garbage and pulling out anything that they can get their hands on that's been thrown out that can be found. There's another character who sort of collects like electronics and pop culture stuff from our time as a way to stay connected to the world that they vaguely remember. And like Pikachu dolls or Bart Simpson sheets or things like that. And there's this scene where somebody gets like beat to death with a Nintendo 64 and stuff. So it's meant to be near future-ish, but there's no like laser beams or anything like that.
Yep. I like that actually. Yeah. That's nice. Nice change from a lot of near future laser floating cars, all that business.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the what's the word I'm looking for here? Like the crucial elements for a successful dystopian story, would you say?
Well, I can only really answer as somebody who enjoys them, as a reader or someone who watches things.
Yeah, that's all I'm after.
Sure.
That's all I'm after.
Oh, perfect. Well, I guess like character not being too like incredibly depressing. Like I can't watch The Road. It's just too grim. And like even, I don't know, having a sense of humor or like acknowledging the absurdity of it all is useful, I think. Like Snowpiercer was a really big sort of just influence on me generally, but also for my prison comic. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't actually. Sorry.
It is at the same time like a fantastic, fucking groundbreaking, phenomenal movie, and also like a total mess and a giant piece of shit. Like it really just collapses at the end there. But
okay.
It's even when it's gone to shit, it's still totally endearing because it's trying so many different things at the same time.
Yep.
And I think if you're gonna do like a dystopian world, one that we've seen so many before, it's important to sort of try new things and indulge in novelty and like I don't want to watch another ripoff of Ghost in the Shell or The Road or whatever. I want to watch something like Snowpiercer. It's like on a train that goes around the world constantly. Like it's fun and it's a little bit silly and I don't know.
Yep.
I think that's what I'm after. Although I did love The Platform, that Netflix film, which was so violent, so depressing. But at the same time, have you heard of this one?
I haven't even heard of that one, otherwise watched it.
It's like there's a lot of cannibalism and it's very grim. But the premise is it's like in a layered prison, and every layer is just like two people in a concrete thing. And down the middle of the prison is this platform that starts off with like a full course meal, like a feast. And then it spends like 2 minutes on every platform. And, the people at the top gorge themselves and the people at the bottom get nothing.
Oh, wow.
And
that's an interesting concept.
Yeah. It's in no way is that ever going to happen in real life.
No.
No, but it's like a fun level of social commentary. It's not in any way pretentious. Like, it's like, yeah, we get it. It's like a capitalist society. Like,
Yeah.
like obviously it's that, but it's a premise where they have fun, and it's very much like super indulgent in gore and cannibalism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Worth checking out if you can stomach that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds cool. Sounds interesting. Yeah. Sounds like a cool concept. Well, we're talking about Under Earth, so you might as well tell us a bit more about Under Earth. Well, we weren't talking about it just then, but you know what I mean. So you were saying it's like a prison where they're dumped or something? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. No stress. So it's geographically, it's set underground, under earth, in a hollowed out old landfill. So there are some maps in the book. The opening page, like the opening end papers, are a map. So I'm sure I can do my best to describe it. It's like a big hollowed out sphere deep under the earth. And the opening sequence is somebody being sent there, a prisoner. So basically they fly them down through this canal from the surface and just throw them out the helicopter or whatever and dump them in there, and they're sort of left to fend for themselves.
Okay.
It has its own like currency. There are different types of jobs, and in terms of like the narrative, it's two parallel stories. So the first is this newcomer who meets a friend and gets involved in this sort of like fighting pit stuff and does all that mining of old garbage that I talked about before. Mm-hmm. And the other story are these two thieves who get hired by these other people to rob the stuff, and then the job goes wrong and it becomes a revenge narrative for them.
Okay.
And so remember how I was talking about the different spot colors?
Like, yep.
So the two narratives each have their own spot color. So the first one is purple.
Oh, that's really cool.
And the other one's yellow. And the narrative, like it's chapter by chapter, but in the middle of the book and at the end of the book, they start to sort of cross over a bunch. Like they're both kind of having similar things happen to them, and at the end of the book, they're in the same space together. So the idea, like the next sort of iteration of the next thing I wanted to try with the spot colors, was using it as a visual cue for cutting. Because like, with a film, you can really generally cut from like intercut sequences very easily, because there's so much detail and there's so much context in a single frame, and our eyes will immediately pick it up. If it's a comic, like everything's simplified down to line work and is like there's less detail, it's harder to immediately just be like, oh, I know exactly what I'm looking at within that just like single instant that you need to. So my aim was to, especially in these fight scenes at the end, like have a six panel grid that'll be like purple panel 1, yellow panel 2, purple panel 3, and just be able to cut and have the color be that visual cue for the reader.
Oh, wow.
I've lost my train of thought. We're talking about Under Earth. Yeah.
Under Earth, yeah.
So yeah, two parallel stories intersect in the middle and end with the different colors, and there's sort of also the other color is like there's fire is red and blood is red, so they do have that other visual connector.
Okay.
Like one of the feedback, like items of feedback I got from Bottled was a friend was like, oh, I like it, but it doesn't feel like it has a central thesis. It's not wrapped up in a single overriding theme or point of view or whatever. There's like different stuff that you put in there or that I put in there that I wanted to get through, but no, I mean, to be cliche or sort of to boil it down, there's no like single message or whatever. So for Under Earth, I wanted to try and do that. That was something that was important to him, and I admire him and I admire his work a lot. So the central theme is people making a life in a broken system. Like it's these prisoners, they're trapped underground. Yep. Everything they do has some sort of cost to it. So, for example, these people who are on their revenge trail, like to do it, they have to like hurt people who didn't necessarily do anything exactly to them. Like like and same with the other guy who gets involved in the fighting pit. Like it's there's no perfect way for them to live their lives. There's no they're kind of just doing their best, which is kind of how I feel a bit. Like everything's a bit fundamentally fucked. You go to Kmart, it's all child labor. Like it's like I can't afford to pay $70 for underwear, so I just get the child labor underwear. Like it's fucked, Anyway, that's the central theme. I think that's all I can think of to say about Under Earth, at least right at the moment.
No, that's fine. That's a really good description. And yeah, I totally understand what you mean too. So yeah, so that's a really cool theme, underlining theme for the book as well.
Without trying to be super depressing about it either.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Anyone knows that's the case, I guess. Well, most people should know that's the case, and it's just you sort of just deal with it, I guess. So I guess my next question. Oh, you were saying you listen to like not self-help, educational how-to. That's what I'm looking for. How-to books. Do you find any of them help? Is there any other learning materials you use to improve your comic writing and comic drawing skills?
There are definitely a few like how-to lectures that I really love. There are ones that I listened to when I first started making comics that are sort of in a similar sort of area for me as like Nausicaa or the sort of really important books you read. Like there's this really amazing talk that Alan Moore and Melinda Gebbie do, I think at an art gallery, and it's just like this 2-hour YouTube video, and it's them just talking about making art and how they do it and what they think about it. Like that's fantastic. It's if anyone wants to search it on YouTube, I think it's just the longest video that they're in, so it's pretty easy to find. I really enjoyed, reading. I think it's Manga Practice and Theory. Have you ever heard of an anime or manga called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
I've heard of other people talk about it, but I haven't read it or seen it. So
okay. I have also not read it or seen it. Just my little brother's enjoyed it. He's sort of like, it's all right. You might like it, you might not. But he got this book off. Someone recommended it, and I was like flicking through, and I was like, this is great. So I had to buy it for myself. And it's this guy's very specific rules that have absolutely worked for him. Like he is incredibly successful, and people really resonates with his stories. But he's very much like, this is how I do it. And if you want to read my book, you can disagree with me by all means. But after this, it's going to be just me explaining exactly how I make it and the rules that I follow. And I really love that because I find his rules to be kind of like bizarre and like just like, for example, one of his rules is that a character can never regress, can never go back a step. They always have to be moving forward, which seems counterintuitive from every film how-to I've ever read. It's always like second act is the lowest point, looks like all is lost. But this guy's like, nah, fuck that. It's always moving forward. And I don't really agree with everything he writes, but I think it's really stimulating and really fun to listen to someone being like, do it this way, because as soon as they say that, you immediately know. Like he says, a character must always move forward. And if you're writing and you're a writer or whatever, you'll have a response just like that in your head, and you'll be like, no, I don't agree with that, or I agree with that. You immediately know what you think. I like that. The one I'm listening to now is pretty good. It's a little bit boring. It's just off Audible. It's How to Write Best-Selling Fiction. It's just basically a really good recap of most sort of like film and novel writing like tropes or whatever, like whatever the standard way to approach a character and like plot structure and stuff like that, which with all of this stuff that I listen to, I think it's like a good starting point. Like the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure guy has this really fantastic like character sheet that he has. And he fills it out for every character he makes. and it's like really specific to him and really fun. Like it's just like, do they have scars? Like what's their worst memory or their greatest fear or whatever? And it's like often when I'm stuck, I'll use that just because it's like it's really weird and fun and easy to get into, as opposed to a lot of these other character sheets, which just seem very stale. And it's anyway.
Yeah.
I think those are the two that I would recommend the most. The Neil Gaiman Masterclass is all right. Probably not worth however much they're charging for it. But
okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah. So great plug there for that. With these books that you've got out, and you've got them through a publisher and everything, and not a lot of Australian comic creators get to do that. What's your feeling on having this? Did you expect to have that level of success with your comics?
Wait, I'm going to choose my words carefully.
Okay.
both like no, so like Top Shelf, From Hell is something they publish, and that's probably still my favorite comic ever, and like I really loved that, and signing with them like was amazing, and it was fantastic, and stuff like that, and I'm super grateful for Top Shelf. I think they're a fantastic publisher, but like I still have to work a day job. Like I don't want to misrepresent any type of success that I have. Like I'm really proud of what I've achieved, but there's also no point pretending that I'm like a millionaire or anything like that. So it's like COVID makes it hard, but like before COVID, it was like call centers and supermarkets and things like that.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think in Australia, we definitely have that sort of like everything looks rosier and more like fancier over in America. Like, not just in terms of publishers. Like I remember going to, I did this residency in 2015 or 16 or whatever, just before Trump. So 15 or 16, yeah. And it was going to a small press fair called Cake. And I heard a lot about it, and I really loved the time I spent there. And there were a lot of fantastic artists, but there was also just a lot of people who were just sort of doing it as a hobby, and whose work was like, all right, just like exactly the same as here. There's a lot of like amazing stuff, and there's a lot of just like, some stuff that somebody made.
All right, cool.
And it's not. I was going over there. I was expecting it all to be like the greatest comic book I've ever seen and be this super high quality, but it's just like here and there it's the same thing. We just don't have a like proper established graphic novel publishing industry.
Okay, so it sort of took the romance out of it. That's probably a good thing. So yeah.
Or at least that sort of like starry-eyed, you know, America's the center of the world in terms of comics or culture. That's definitely not true. But yeah,
that's really cool. That's really cool to know. I thought the same thing myself. I thought the whole day job doing comics on the side was an Australian thing, but that's interesting to hear that it's also an American thing.
Absolutely, and it's horrifying for them because they don't have health insurance. Like,
oh yeah, I always forget that about America. That's because it's hard to imagine because I've lived in Australia all my life. To not have that just seems strange.
Yeah, and you have to work a full-time job over there to get it, I think. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, certain, and even then you don't get it. I actually know a few Americans, and they've told me that it's just one of those benefits that some jobs have, not every job.
That is
just
fucked.
That is, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting this job and it's not too bad, but I've got this other job and it's got medical health care, so I want this one more. And I'm like, oh, that's a horrible way to be. Oh, sorry, Lee. Hello, Lee. Thanks for joining us. So what would you say is, I think I don't know why I'm reading this, and I'm feeling I've already asked this. What was the hardest part of just comic creation in general?
I mean, when I first started, it was definitely putting yourself out there.
Yep.
And sort of
that'd be a big thing here for everyone. A lot of people I know as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like this. I can't even remember what it was. Maybe some Twitter screen cap or something. Somebody saying like, you know, if you have decent taste, if you can sort of engage with the story and tell when a story is good and when it's working for you, like when you first start writing, you're going to write a bunch of shit, and you're going to be able to tell it's not very good. Like that, I think that's a really big hump to get over, is to one, sort of realize that it's not that big of a deal if you write something that isn't the greatest ever, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. And two, like, accept that what you're writing is the start of something, and it will get better and you'll improve. And the only way to do that is to push forward and put new things out. Nowadays, though, I'm a little bit older, and I think the biggest challenge is just like how the fuck do I fit this into the rest of my life? Like, I need to transition out of, I'd like to transition out of, dead-end jobs, but it's very difficult when comics take so much time,
Yeah.
Not that, sorry, I don't mean to be pitying. It's not pitying or anything. Like it's amazing.
Oh, no. It's all good. It's all good.
But I'd say that that's the where I am now, like 27, like the biggest sort of like hurdle, and I don't have any answers. A lot of people I know went into teaching or lecturing or stuff like that, or Patreon if you have a big following. But yeah, I don't know. How do you make it work?
Wish I knew. I'm trying to figure that out myself. I'm trying to help other people figure that out as well. So that's so it's a nice little challenge for me.
Yeah. The other thing is that like making a full-time wage off of something doesn't make it worthwhile. Like the best things are having like a sense of community and making something and putting it out there. Like, it's just like a life problem or a life hurdle. It's not such a big deal.
Yeah. Just finding all the pieces to make it all fit together, and so you can still do what you love. So yeah. Well, I've run out of questions, which is perfect timing because we're at the crossover turn to the next person. So
perfect.
Yeah, we've timed that perfectly. Thanks, Chris.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for talking about your books with us and talking about how you get through the whole process and everything. That's been awesome, very educational. And thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's really appreciated. Just before we go, I got your books from, I think, do you have like a best place to go, or would me saying just look up those titles on Booktopia is a good place to start?
Absolutely that one, or if you have a comic book shop or a bookshop, if you like, they can order it in for you. It's distributed in comic book shops by Diamond and in bookshops by Penguin Random House. So it should be available if you're willing to wait.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So just those titles again.
2016, 250 pages is Bottled, my first graphic novel. Then 2019, I think it's about 200 pages, is Deep Breaths, short story collection. Then recently, end of 2020, was my graphic novel called Under Earth, which is about 550 pages.
Yep.
Perfect.
Nice. And they're very quality books. Unfortunately, I've got to read them still. But they're nice books.
The publisher did a good job. They did a good job.
They did a good job. So yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone watching. I hope you got something out of that. And I will let you go, Chris. Thank you for giving us your time, and have fun getting your fridge. And
thank you.
And yes, thank you again, and see you later.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
See ya. Okay, so that was Chris Gooch, and he's had a lot of fun there talking with him. And now we will go straight to our next guest, which is Lauren Marshall. So we shall just press this button. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, thanks. Without Jerome tonight, he's not well. So he said he was going to comment if he was well enough to even watch. And it looks like he isn't even well enough to watch, poor fella. No. So it's just me struggling, doing everything at once and trying to remember questions. So
well, good job. No, you're doing fine. It's going to be good.
So just bear with me. So, I mean, what I did with Chris was I started right at the beginning. I mean, because I've done an interview with you before, but for those people who didn't see it or who are meeting you for the first time, what got you into writing comics and graphic novels?
So I've always been a little bit of a quirky and nerdy girl. I think it sort of bottles down to rats here, rats in the hussy. It bottles down to my brother. He was always so heavy into gaming. Like we got the Nintendo, the original Nintendo when it first came out, and it was just like watching a prodigy child doing everything and like smashing Battletoads for the first time, like which is unheard of. But just like growing up with him as an older brother and seeing what he liked, and I wasn't like I still liked a couple of girly things here and there, but it just sort of kept gravitating back towards like Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Street Sharks, like stuff like that. So
you should.
And so
they were awesome.
When I got older, even through high school, like I was always arty. My mum, fantastic, I shouldn't say illustrator, fantastic artist in terms of doing like nude portraits and stuff like that. She was very heavy into charcoal, simplistic, but it was absolutely stunning work. And I just followed in her footsteps, right? I was just like naturally gravitating towards a creative lifestyle. And in high school did the art diploma, but that was all, like painting fruit bowls and I don't know, like drawing stuffed like taxidermy or something, which is fine. Like I learned a lot from it, color theory, lighting, shading, blah, blah, blah. But any mention of doing illustrating or comics in general, like my teachers would just say, hell no. But I'm glad I pursued it because I went and did my diploma in animation, which I got directly after high school. But because back then, which was 2006, 2007, the industry just was pretty non-existent here in Perth, and I just wasn't ready to move either eastern states or overseas. So went to more like static animation in terms of 2D drawing. And then sort of just went from there.
Oh, yeah, cool. Nice. Awesome journey.
Yeah.
So you went from that. So what was your first involvement in the actual comic industry?
Supernova, actually. I went to, it was either Comic-Con or Supernova. I went to one of the shows that we had in Perth and I dragged mum along because I didn't have any girlfriends that wanted to come along with me, funnily enough. And I stumbled across Julian DeLeo and I saw his work at the Perth show. And I asked him about it. I was like, oh, how did you get a spot, blah, 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 and didn't realize how easy it was. So I knew Supernova was coming up, so I popped my name down and the journey sort of started there. It was more just like testing the fan art type of things, not so much like actual comic work, like in terms of sequentials or anything like that. But the reaction's really good, and a lot of people, like I think I got a bit of a kick out of others like really enjoying it and just being themselves. And then like you just see a full spectrum of people, right? Like you'd see like this big giant buff macho guy and like a girl just like frothing over Goku. Like you just be like, it's an eclectic mix and just absolutely love it. So I think it's just like the unity in people that love one thing. It was just, it was nice to see. So I just kept pursuing it, I guess.
Oh yeah, cool. So when you pursued it, what did you find was the most difficult thing to get into comics yourself? The actual sequentials.
Learning it, I guess. I think I was always just heavily into just doing like one piece and one really good piece. Whereas with sequentials, it's all about telling a story, and you're not, whether it's time or experience, you're not always probably going to be at the level to make every panel look like a cinematic piece, right? And it's all about creating a story, keeping the reader engaged, and actually using the right emotions, body language, stuff like that, actually learning the mechanics of characters and how they would move, and studying that. There was a lot more information in that than a lot of people think. But in terms of like, whilst it was a challenge, obviously, I think I got a lot out of doing animation, because obviously doing animatics and storyboarding, which is basically just like sketchy sequentials, right? Just not really fancy. But yeah, like learning that you actually have to actually study the human body, like nonverbal communication is such a huge thing in terms of telling a story without any words, right? If you can't do that, then there's no, like, the words help, but if the static image just looks bland and there's no emotion in it, there's no point, right? So it's about like actually nailing each panel, and them telling a story and making sense.
No, that's true. That's true. You do that very well, actually, by the way. I'm a big fan of Lana Leuka, so yeah. And just as a bit of a nod to Jerome, because he loves asking this question. If you are out there, Jerome, and you're just too unwell to text, do you have a ritual that you have before you start drawing and so forth, working on a comic?
Oh God.
He loves to ask this. So I just thought I'd throw it out there.
In terms of like starting to work, procrastinating, staring at the wall for a good half an hour, flicking through Instagram.
Same ritual as me. Oh, nice. What are you doing stealing my rituals?
Hey, they work sometimes, but if you get like jealous enough of another artist, and you be like, all right, I'm just going to show you one and bust something out. So watch out, Mr. Instagram 121. I'm going to freaking come at you. Look, I don't have like a specific one, right? Sometimes you just have to get it done. Like the amount of, so I work a 9 to 5, right? Which is really, so I go to the gym first thing in the morning. I get up at 5 a.m., go to the gym for an hour, go straight to work, get home about 6 o'clock. So I'm not home for most of the day. So I don't really have time to be able to think about it. But because I'm constantly going all the time, I'm sort of in that frame of mind where I just have to keep creating. It's my life, right? It's what I've worked towards every day. But I think it's more getting out of working all the time is a ritual that I need to look at. But there's things that you need to like kind of do, like creating a workspace around you that motivates you and reminds you of why you're doing something. So putting posters up on the wall like behind me, or actually getting equipment and new art products that you're willing to try. Like always keeping yourself fresh, I think, is good. Like I've just ordered some Deleta nib pens, like actual dip ink ones, to give a crack. Get back into the traditional side of things. I find like I get a bit bland because I've been doing digital for a long time, like over a year now, and not really touching traditional anymore. So keeping my mind fresh and revisiting old techniques and stuff, and just seeing, because traditional and digital work really well together, obviously. So, and seeing which format works better. So to be honest, I don't have a ritual. I just kind of keep going and keep lashing my back.
Most don't, but Jerome likes to ask that question, so I just sort of throw that out for him. He'll be watching us tomorrow if he's not watching it tonight. So, so at what age, if you remember, did you start drawing?
11.
11.
Then.
Wow. See, I can't remember when I did, so I'm impressed people remember what age they were.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably around the age 11-ish, I should say, not specific. But I do know that we had moved to Tassie for Dad's work, and because we had moved around so much as kids, we kind of had to find something to keep ourselves not so much occupied, but for mental health reasons and stuff like that. So art was always a thing for me, and I just pursued it after that. It was also watching Toy Story for the first time. And then I just knew that like this is the avenue. I want to create things like this, the first Toy Story. So that was when animation sort of like piqued my interest. And just continued on from there. And did all
And that
that.
makes me feel old because I was quite old when Toy Story came out. I was going to say, I know that I was drawing at least in 87. So what's that? That made me 12. No, 11, because I don't turn 12 until the end of the year. So I've actually found this book of all this art that I did when I was
That's cool.
11 years old. So it's funny that you say 11. It's really bad art too.
No.
But anyway, we're here for you, not for me.
Improving art. That's always the thing. It's never bad. Maybe cringy. It's not bad.
Cringiness, if it wasn't such light pencils, I could actually show it up to the screen, but you wouldn't be able to see any of it. I must have been using 2H or something.
Yeah, it's nice to reflect on it though, I think. Because it's
it's a good laugh. It's a great laugh once I found it. Some of the characters I designed, I was very what's the word, patriotic. They're all Australian. They have names that are like Australian towns and Australian animals, and everything's Australian with the occasional New Zealand sidekick. It's quite amusing. Yeah, so
That's
anyway,
cool.
this is about you, not about me. Which oh no, I don't think I like that question. It puts you on the spot. Is there any particular Australian creators that you follow more than others?
Well, it's, to be honest, I've only really connected with a lot of Australian creators recently in terms of indie comics, but in terms of people that I've connected with, like the community from the conventions, and because I used to do every single one, I used to pay my own way to go to all the conventions around Australia, so you kind of had to create a close-knit community to survive, for one, but also to let your hair down, because dealing with people for 12 was that like 10 hours a day or something, like ridiculous. It's like it drains you. But yeah, like Sean Keenan, Julian, Mark, like I think we've lost touch because of the conventions. There's not so much going on anymore. You know, like I've learned a lot from them. We use like sharing tips and stuff like that. Like God, there's like, I could make a huge list of the people that we used to like hang out. Like Austin Mengler, like whilst he's not completely in the comic industry, he's still an Australian creator and an illustrator, working in like concept art and stuff like that, which kind of ties in a lot with what we do anyway.
Yeah, it would.
But yeah, like you kind of bounce ideas off each other, and because there's such an eclectic mix of styles and avenues that they work in, it's good to, yeah, like I said, like bounce ideas across, because you could spark something by chatting to them. So I'm always open to, you know, conversations and collaborations and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the community from the conventions was surprisingly super tight and supportive.
That's awesome. Hopefully they come back soon. Well, they're sort of coming back and then sort of not, and then sort of coming back.
Cancelled, cancelled, and then coming back and then not, and yeah.
Yeah, it's very annoying. So I know that you're like a illustrator in your day job. Is that right?
Yeah. So I work for Short Batch Printing. So Short Batch Printing, we do custom apparel, and so we do like the hand screen printing with silk screens. But I handle some of the design, illustration, and sales there, which is good because I go to a creative workspace. Like the company is incredible. We we're owned by another company called Media Engine, and we do like production, like video production and logo design, flyers, like all kinds of stuff. And it's just a bunch of different creators around, which has been super insightful, because whilst they're kind of like real corporate techniques and real like sharp and clean, and illustrations completely different to doing like type or like your logo designs and flyer designs and stuff like that. It's just opened completely, you know, when you think you might know something and then you come into an industry or you come across someone and they're just like, you're dumb. Like, you're just, they wouldn't say that to you, obviously, but you're just like, wow, I actually know absolutely nothing about this industry, or like the skill set that's required to do it. So I've learned so much by working with them. And now that I look back on, say, Lana, the first issue, I look at it and I'm like, I could have elevated this so much more if I took the time to learn, like, say, Illustrator, like Adobe Illustrator, which it was too confronting for me to even touch back then. But anyway, going back to, short batch, like we do, like I said, custom apparel, but I get to play with different venues, like a lot of breweries and stuff we come across.
Yeah, I've noticed
bars,
that.
Gyms, like, and then like the sky's the limit in terms of drawing what I can for them. Like they'll give me a concept of what they kind of want to go towards. Like one I got recently was called Stein and Swine. So obviously incorporating beer with a boar almost. So it's just like it's good as a challenge, but it's a lot of fun because it's not something that I would typically pick for myself to draw. And technique wise, I can apply that and learn from it. So amazing job. We have pinball machines, so we can just chill out whenever we want and have a can of Coke, and it's kind of like one of those companies that you just kind of like pinch yourself that you get to work there. So yeah, incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I've had one or two of them in my entire working career. Maybe just one of them actually.
This one you get to do it.
Oh, this one, yeah. Well, this is a job, isn't it? Now it's become a job. This would be the one where I pinch myself big time. Yeah. If you had asked me 3 years ago would I be doing this, I wouldn't have ever imagined it.
Yeah.
Especially the live shows, because this type of thing still semi freaks me out. But a few months ago, it totally freaked me out.
Now look at you. We're just having a big old yarn online.
So I've got a list of things to keep me on track. But now I know Lana Leuka. Have you done any like stories that are totally yours? Because I'm not familiar with.
No,
that you wrote and drew.
I'm not a writer.
Okay.
The amount of spelling mistakes I make in a day, yeah, nah. Like, I've got a creative brain. I can think about like ideas, like in terms of, I'm quite hands-on in terms of the story for Lana anyway. It's just articulating that into a story that makes sense and that is well written. Definitely not my forte. I know my strengths. It's not one of them. It's definitely not writing. But in terms of like creating ideas and arcs and stuff like that, like climaxes, whatever, like I can definitely visualize it. I'm more of a visual person. So that's why I get a writer to come in, because I don't think it would be as elevated as it is if I didn't. If it was just me, it wouldn't happen.
That's fair enough. Because I don't have talent in either of those fields, so I have to get two people. So, this is a good question. Yes. How do you balance with your female characters? Because a lot of people don't do this. The badassness and still feminine.
I just look in the mirror, mate. Oh no. Hey, look, I like to think of myself as a bit of both, but look, it wasn't really like a representation thing at all. It was just a character that I really identify well with, like Tank Girl. She's kind of loosely based off that sort of style of character. And I feel like, look, she's still sexy, right? But it's not like big old knockers in your face. Not something that you like. People love it. Like, look, I don't mind it. Like, whatever. But I didn't want that to be the sole focus of her as a character, or any of the characters. Like, there is obviously a nymph in Lana Leuka, but like she doesn't scream it. Almost, it's more about the body language and stuff like that, which is what I like to focus on. Thank you. It was a good answer. That was quick.
Yeah, it was a good answer.
And like like I said, it wasn't a representation thing, but I'm glad I kind of hit that nail on the head because there isn't enough representation, but I just really wanted to portray someone that I looked up to. And, Lana is sort of a manifestation of all the things that I do love, like rabbits and like being strong and purple, pretty much. So it was more about that side of things. But
big on the purple. Big on the purple.
Yeah. Purple. Girly, but not, So yeah, I'm glad that other people see that that's what I was trying to achieve. So that's it's a bonus for sure.
I agree with Darren on this one.
Haha.
Can't wait to issue 2.
It would be good. I just need a time machine so I can juggle everything that I managed to try and say yes to,
No, cloning. That's what it's all about. Cloning. That's what I'm trying to learn.
I'll go send my shell of a human being to work and they can deal with her and I'll just keep my full self. Sorry.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to learn how to clone as well so I can get all this ComX stuff done. Well, you're not a writer, so it's probably more visually. Is there anything that inspires we'll say Lana Leuka because it's weird to say inspires your characters because that doesn't really say much. Like Lana Leuka, was there anything that inspired her? You've said Tank Girl so far.
Tank Girl, yeah. Jessica Rabbit, another one, like watching Roger Rabbit as a kid. I don't know, she's she's like super sexualized, right? But she also had that like don't F with me type thing.
Exactly.
I gravitated towards too. But yeah, like this what I said before, it was just about someone that I envisioned and felt like I had a part of it within myself as well. So, but in terms of the other characters, like there's a few. There's Chase, and there's also a couple of other characters like D. I feel like D is based off like Bruce Willis. I don't know why. Like when I was drawing him, I just gravitated towards him because Bruce is rugged and he's still got a bit of a soft side, but you have to dig like real hard to find it. So that's it. He's a bit of a silver fox, that one. But then like say Chase is sort of like the male protagonist. He think Constantine almost, like sort of that like hardship detective, a little bit rough around the edges, and just trying to like get ahead, but he keeps like pushing the limits a little bit too far, which kind of like shoots him in the foot a little bit. So I'm looking forward to developing them a little bit more, which issue two will be. It'll kind of shed some light on a couple of extra characters, plus a new one. There will be a new character involved, which funnily enough is a little bit based off my husband. Though we did sort of give a little teaser of him from what I was going to have as the second cover, but I don't know whether it was the color combination or his hair and stuff, and people were like, it looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take that down. I definitely don't want Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like, it's definitely not what I'm going for. So just going to like take that back, revisit it, and put it back out into the world when I kind of like 100% make sure he's not going down that pathway.
So you're saying he's not a Shaggy from Scooby-Doo?
Oh, he probably still likes food, but he's probably not scared of everything,
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
So, I got totally off track then. I had a question, and when you started, it's the same thing I asked Chris before. When you started, what did you find was the hardest thing yourself getting into comics?
Look, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Not sure?
I just knew
it was all hard. It was all easy.
It was just all fun, I guess.
Oh, okay, cool.
I never really thought of money. Obviously, money's always a struggle. I mean, that's sort of a given, right? But it was. I didn't really face too many like setbacks in terms of people not supporting or me just like getting confused or other hurdles coming in place. I mean, life's life, right? Like, whilst my journey hasn't gone as quick as I want it to, or my skills to be exactly where I want them to be, I've enjoyed every part of it almost.
Awesome.
Like, yeah, you know, and I made those tough decisions. Like, I moved to Sydney to be by myself so I could learn from professionals in the industry. And like, I got to the point where I got very depressed. I was not happy being there. But I enjoyed the fact that I learned a lot. And whilst emotionally it wasn't great, I just knew that that's what I needed to do. And I'm glad that that's what I did. And it's made me more comfortable with myself as well, because I had to become someone that not only motivated myself, but also pushed myself and was a friend to myself as well, which a lot of people I find, especially in this industry, struggle with being their own friend and being their own, like, cheering themselves on and being like, yeah, you got this, bitch, you can do this. Like, you kind of need it. You do, because you're gonna come up with these setbacks. Like, you've got social media and stuff where Instagram's like you're losing followers every day, or you're gaining heaps of followers every day. Or a new social platform comes out, TikTok. I don't know what the hell that is. Like, I don't have time to scratch my own bum. I like TikTok's another app I have to deal with. And like, you know, an admin as well, like doing your website. I haven't touched my website. I haven't touched my store, but it's all about just making sure that I enjoyed it. And I still do. Like, I know I work, what is it? I get to work at 7:30 and I sometimes finish at 9 when I get home, but it's the joy of it. I just really enjoy putting work out there and supporting others, you know? So, I think it's, keeping that consistency and making sure I don't lose track would probably be the hardest thing, which fortunately I haven't come across yet.
Yes.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
So, here's one of those general questions. See if this always amuses me. This because I have a horrible memory as a child. Can you remember your first comic book?
Oh God, probably not.
Probably not. You like me, actually, where it's like, okay. I think it was this one.
Oh God, I have so many, right? I'm just looking at like my little shelf over there. I've got a lot of art books. I started collecting like Pixar art books and DreamWorks art books, like with all the concept stuff in it. So I've got them, but I would say the first comic book that I particularly went out to buy and has stuck with me is Black Sad, which Black Sad is stunning book. Let me see. Oh, it's right here. I think I talked to you guys about this off air from the Drink and Draw. But
yes, I thought I knew that. I thought I heard the title somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. That's a nice big book.
Wish I could pronounce the guy's name. But
I
anyway,
can't pronounce
last name I'm not going to even try. But all the stories, like, whilst they're quite political, they're quite they're still a noir. So you know what? Actually, I think Black Sad sort of influenced Lana as well, to be honest, because it's very same tone set, rugged investigator type guy, like trying to find his way, running over like these different scenarios, and like it touches on like KKK, but it's all anamorphic. It's all animals. It's like, I shouldn't say anamorphic, the actual animals. In saying that, they still have like hands and dress like humans and stuff like that, but the art's phenomenal. It's all watercolor. It's stunning, absolutely stunning artwork. So I would recommend it to absolutely anybody. There's a particular scene in it, which is like him doing a barrel roll and trying to dodge some other enemy, like trying to shoot him, and just the sequence of the panels and how he's drawn it, like that particular 8 panels is going to stick with me for the rest of my life, because that's the kind of storytelling I want to do. So I would say that would be the comic that I will remember as like the first one that just was like, this is what I want to do, you know?
That's really cool. Well, I guess while we've got you here, you have, well, First we'll start on Lana Leuka. Is there anything you'd like to talk about with issue 2? Let people know when it's coming out, anything like that, where it's at?
So I'm still working on an issue of Bolt, which is actually in its final stages, which is awesome. So finishing off inking, they're getting flattered and then coloring and wording, which, as anybody who works in comics, I think layouts take out a lot of time, and making sure that you nail the script. So that's why this one's taken a little while, because I just wanted to make sure that it was correct. And yeah, Andrew's just been such a champ. I mean, this hasn't had a particular deadline, so he's been very understanding with other projects and stuff like that. So this is definitely like, I want to get this done before I do anything else, and get it in his hands and share all these goodies to everybody. But then as soon as that's done, it's sort of Lana's full ball. The story's done, and it'll just be about making sure that I've got the Kickstarter to go. I still don't even know if I want to do a Kickstarter, or whether I just self-publish it and just sell it, which might be easy to handle. But in terms of getting it out into the world and people actually seeing it, because I know Kickstarter is pretty much just like a platform to get your work out there as well, that people wouldn't particularly
it's a big
see
marketing
otherwise.
platform, I'm saying,
Big
to notice,
marketing. But it is a very stressful thing to do and manage whilst I'm doing not only a full-time job, but also still working on other projects and handling that, so, but
Understood.
95% I'm probably going to do it anyway. So just, I'm a sucker for pain. But
Ooh, go pain.
Yeah, woo. But no, she's pretty much ready to go. And as soon as I ink a couple of pages and get them colored and pop them up as a preview, then it'll definitely be before end of year. I'm aiming for like a September Kickstarter release. So that's like, what, a month and a half away? I know I said August, but
oh wow, yeah,
I had a couple of things pop up, but as usual, life is life. So yeah, that fingers crossed that it sticks to plan this time.
Awesome. Well, I guess the other project that I know of anyway is Young Rufus.
Young Rufus, yes, it's been an absolute blast working on that one.
Yep. So you're just one short story. How many pages?
I did 6 pages, but cool. Also did a pin-up, and then there's also some sketches and colouring book stuff that we'll be doing as well. But nice. The mix of artists, because I've seen a lot of it already, obviously for reference and stuff like that, but super mixed bag, and it's cool. Like, I know some people have flagged saying that like having a mixed bag of artists can be a little bit it can be confusing for people, but because it's full wrapped up stories, right? It's one story, one artist, one story, one artist, and then continuing on from there. So I think it's really good because, one, you get to see a wide variety of different artists that you can see like their style and their storytelling.
Yep.
But it keeps it fresh. Like, you don't, like, you might look at something and then be like, oh, I would never buy artwork from, or a story that's drawn this way, but then you might look at it because obviously you've bought it for something else, and you see the style and you could be like, hell yeah, this is actually kind of cool, and then it leads you down to the artist's different work and stuff like that. Like, I think that's a real smart way of supporting but also keeping it fresh. So yeah, Darren's done a real good choice in terms of doing it that way.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like a really good book. I'm looking forward to it, actually. And I saw a bit of your work on a live that you did. I don't know how many times you did it. I just caught one of them. So
my sporadic
for the one
lives.
where he's on the bicycle.
On the bike. Yeah, so that's the pin-up. So that will be like more of a singular piece. So I had a lot more time to do that one, which was good. Kind of envisioning and capturing the different characters' personas, and having a good play with that, because obviously fresh characters are good for me to work with, and especially Indigenous characters. Like, that was awesome. And I, like, after working on this project, I know I don't I'm not very inclusive of other people of color and stuff like that. So it was a good eye opener for me, and a learning curve. So it was really good, and learned a lot about different like ethnicities and their facial structure and stuff like that. So loved it. It was super good learning curve.
Oh, yeah, cool. And you look like you had a lot of fun on that live stream that I saw you on as well. So drawing it. I can't narrow down which one it was because I know you did more than one, but I only
a
saw the
few.
one.
I just ramble on.
There were a
It's
few.
more for the company, I think. I just sit in my room with nothing to do. And my dogs can't talk back to me. Sorry.
Sure they can. Row, row, row.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be something along the lines of, this is a question from Jerome, mixed in amongst mine. He's curious how the process worked that you got recruited for Rufus. Was there anything in particular, or just Darren reached out?
Darren said, "How you going? You want to do some work for me?"
Okay, yep. So nice and simple. There you go, Jerome. Nice and simple.
No, I think actually it was from like me and Darren started talking like probably under 12 months ago, and only like more consistently recently and checking in on each other and stuff like that, which has been awesome because like I said, like my girlfriends and stuff like that, family, not super into comics. They're not really like super nerdy. They do appreciate it. They support me where they can. But in terms of like talking shop with them, it's like I don't really have anybody to turn to be able to talk like that. So same with you guys, like drink and draw and stuff. Like I've learned a lot, and the support's been awesome. So after I did Sketch Biz on Kickstarter, Darren reached out and said, "Do you want to do?" Because he was running his other Killaroo book at the time. He said, "Do you want to do like a little like crossover print? It's like if you support this one, you support her one, you get this bonus print." So I sketched it, Darren inked it, and then I colored it. So it was a nice little like collab piece, and seeing other styles and stuff like that. And then from there, Darren just reached out and said if I would like to work on it, and I said, hell yeah. So pretty simple.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's got a Kickstarter going at, that's right, he's going along with
11
ours.
days.
So going at the moment.
11 days. So young, what is it, Darren? If you want to flick up your URL.
I think Darren's watching. So just whack it in the comments there, and
I think
I'll put it everywhere. I think it's youngrufus.killaroo.
That's the one. But it's like it's already funded and stuff, but it's more one, there's bonuses that you can get, obviously, and then you're supporting other artists. Like everyone in the book will get supported and stuff like that. So it's more about, and obviously because it's like full-blown Australian, like it's true blue comic, which you don't see too much of. It's also ties into a lot of the older Killaroo stuff. Like a lot of people think it's going to be quite kiddish, but it's actually quite, like the stories are actually quite mature, and then tie into a lot about his upbringing and why he is that he is. So I think it's more for backstory stuff for those hardcore Killaroo fans.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think all we got left now is a Jerome question, and then we've got to wing it. So Jerome would like to know if you were talking a mainstream IP, Australian, American, whatever, European, whatever, who would you really love to get your hands on, do a story drawing for, like a sequential comic?
I want to do a turtle cover so bad.
Okay, that's cool.
I love Ninja Turtles. Like it's like like I said, that's what I grew up with. Like I'd love to do a Transformers one as well, but geometric stuff and then doing precision work, not my jam. I've tried, didn't work. Or actually, funnily enough, Sonic the Hedgehog would be like a huge thing for me as well.
Oh, really?
Which I reckon I could nail a cover or sequential work. So without diploma in animation, obviously when you're an animator, typically you have to animate someone else's character, right? And you have to learn how to draw it left, right, and center. You get a model sheet, you say, hey, you have to draw it like this, and you have to draw it their style, not your style. So we actually had to do that, and I chose Sonic as my character. So it's something that, like, if someone goes, you want to draw something, I draw something because I just know how to draw it. It's in the back of my like head. It's ingrained in there, and I just do it onto the paper. So that's kind of like a nostalgic thing for me, which I would, like, if that, like, mainstream stuff, that would be my jam. In terms of Aussie stuff, I always wanted to work for Gestalt Comics because they're Perth-based, a Perth-based publisher. But luckily enough, I actually got the opportunity this year. So I did 4 pages for Talguard, which hopefully the coloured pages will be popping up soonish. I think I shared like a little panel from it yesterday for it. So this guy just like throwing some old chickens around, and it was like a
I saw that one.
Disaster. But yeah, that one was really cool, and that was a nice little job that popped up because I didn't reach out to them; they reached out to me, which was really nice. And yeah, because it's Perth based on Perth, and then also I've seen other talented artists work on it. Like, it was So in terms of Aussie, that was sort of like a milestone for me, and I did it, so which was good.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So I think that pretty much wraps up what we're going to talk about. You've talked about Lana, you've talked about Rufus, talked about what was the other one? Bolt.
The amazing Bolt. Electrifying Bolt. Sorry, the electrifying Bolt.
Electrifying
Bolt. More another kids one, which is good. I've done 1 issue already, which I've had to refer to the old pages, and it's sort of like real cringeworthy for me because that was sort of like one of the first like proper comics I've done, and she's good, but she's not great. So it's good to like elevate that, right? Like revisit an old piece and then elevate it up even more. Like that's, I think there's going to be a few issues released when Supernova or Comic-Con or whatever actually comes around. So we're just sort of trying to create like a big backlog of issues that we can put out to the world and say like, look, issue 2, 3, 4 is like already out, like grab them all while you're here type thing. So creating that lore and that world and helping Andrew do that, like it's been a pleasure. So
cool. Just for my own personal reasons, does he go all the way around to all the different conventions? You know? You're not sure?
Like back then, probably, but now, probably not.
Same
with me. Like,
at the moment, it's all over the shop. It's hard to do anything.
When it was cheaper back then, like the tables weren't as much. I think they've like doubled in price since then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then also flight's not great. But yeah, I imagine he'll be dipping his fingers into a few different states, and when we get the chance.
If he doesn't come to Brisbane, we'll have to find another way to get them.
No, there'll be like online and stuff, like this website you can go to. And
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Lauren. Thanks for coming on. It was a real pleasure chatting with you about everything. I've shared the Young Rufus link. I hope I got it right. Darren's not correcting me, so I'm hoping that means I got it right, or it means he's not watching one or the other. So I've put that out there. Lana Leuka coming soon. Bolt coming soon. Thank you very much. So have a great night, and real pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, and well done.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Awesome.
Always good to talk to you.
Bye.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that was a nice show. I'm going to end the show. Usually we end it with a review of comics that we've read, but I've been working so hard on a particular Kickstarter that I'm just going to click the right button and bring up the link to presents.comx.studio will take you to the Kickstarter I've been working very hard on instead of reading comics. It is I'll show you a picture, actually. That's probably the easiest way to do this. It's this Kickstarter here. The ComX Presents and Presents Noir. We have 2 books, Presents and Presents Noir, like I just said, repeating myself. And we have the Presents is a color edition, 4 stories, 8 pages each, 48-page book all up when you include all the extra pages. And then we've got the Noir, which is black and white, 4 black and white stories, also black and also 8 pages by 4. So you're looking at, if you get both books, you're looking at 8 individual stories, all by different creators, all in their own styles, all in their own style of art, all in their own style of storytelling. So it's a great way to get a taste of all the different type of genres and just styles that are out there in Australian comics at the moment, because these are all Australian creators. As ComX is all about, Australian creators and Australian artists and Australian writers. So yeah, check out the Kickstarter at presents.comx.studio and check out the different pledges that you can give. You can get one of the books, you can get both the books, you can get all 4 covers, because there are 4 covers to each comic done by each of the 4 artists. They include all characters, all the main characters, I should say, from the stories. And yeah, let's see if I've got any examples of them. Yeah, here we go. Here's the color ones. Oh, hello, you can see me. So here's the color covers. We've got one from Rob Lyle, Ed Kearsley, Peter Wilson, and Isaac George in order of going across the screen there. And then we have our Noir, or black and white, which we've got Lee Chalker on the left there. Then we've got Dave Dye, Duncan Prenavicius, and Tony Menzies. That's his cover. So they all have stories inside the books, and they have each done a cover for the book itself. So there are sets where you can get all 4 or 8 if you want both stories, or all 8 stories. And yeah, we are, let me have a look. We are sitting at $2,758. So that makes us, let's do some maths in my head, $242 off the first goal, which is to give you all these. Let's see if I can find the screen where we were. And I haven't actually put up a picture of all of them. So here's just one of the prints we'll be giving as part of the stretch goal by Dane Goulter. Sorry, I think I pronounced that wrong. Sorry, Dane. And yeah, so there's another 4 of them printed by other artists. We've got Nick May, Dana Lawson, Ryan Vella, and I've got the picture in my head and I'm trying to remember who it is. Oh, it's just gone blank. Oh, sorry, Ben Sullivan. Sorry, Ben. So yeah, so check out that Kickstarter, presents.comx.studio, and check out, get your friends to pledge, get your family to pledge, get your dogs to pledge, and we'll see if we can't get ourselves up to that $3,000 mark. And I hope that's about everything I've been saying there, Inspirational Gaming. Already backed. Nice. Thank you very much. Very impressed. So did you get your dog or your cat to pledge as well? That's what I'm asking. So thank you very much for coming to the show. I'll get that picture off my face if I go to the right button. Thank you very much for coming. It was really fun talking to Chris and Lauren today or tonight. And yeah, have a good night, everyone. Thank you for checking out the Kickstarter. If you've gone over there, thank you for pledging. If you can't pledge, that's fine. Share it. I'm happy with shares as well. That will help spread the word, which is all we can ask. Thank you very much and have a great night. See you, everyone.